I've raised over $64 million, from people who are looking to build wealth. I've made them over $20 million, which was the number that Faisal mentioned. And a lot of that is people that I met on WhatsApp or on social media that felt comfortable wiring me large sums of money to invest. And a lot of that is building trust, building credibility, having the right structures, understanding people's mindsets, all of the same things that I would argue happens when you're talking to a coach. So I'm more than happy to dive in further. I know Faisal's going to ask me some really insightful questions, and hopefully ultimately for both of us, we're just here to provide you value as you continue to scale.
Hey, it's Daniel, and you are about to watch a clip from our free podcast, The Coach's Journey, where we help you navigate the surprisingly difficult path of building a coaching business by people who are actually doing it. And we go live, raw and unedited every week in our free Facebook community.
Right. Coaches Nation, welcome to the Coach's Journey podcast. We're super excited to have a special guest today, my friend Mustafa, here to share very valuable insights as to how he went from 0 to 20 something million in clients in a high ticket environment. And now Mustafa will go into his journey around how he did that and what kind of business he was in. But the business model is similar to coaches because it's a high ticket business model and requires a high level of trust, a high quality process, and it's a high ticket offer on the other side. And it doesn't work without trust, connection, and credibility. And so he's going to share the struggles in that process and how you can actually adopt a part of that for yourself. And I'll jump in whenever it's needed to speak specifically to what might be different in the coaching world a little bit more. I'd love to learn. First of all, thank you, Mustafa, for jumping on our podcast, my second podcast. I appreciate you joining me for the second one. He also came into my last podcast as well. So super appreciate you.
No, thank you so much, Faisal, for the opportunity. Coaches Nation, it's awesome to be here with you. Maybe I can start by giving a brief background on myself.
Yeah, for sure.
Went to Rutgers University, studied genetics, went to medical school, decided I didn't want to be a doctor, worked in big pharma, knew that's not necessarily what I wanted to do, but kind of had to figure out how I would help people. And that's always been, my goal in life. Very early on in professional America, it became very clear that people don't really understand how money works. And that's the pain point that I was going to solve. Like any good coach, you kind of see a problem and you think, hey, I want to solve this. I want to help people solve this. But also you recognize the gap. Like if I'm not doing it myself, how can I help other people do it? So I went on that journey of self-discovery, led to, me creating a couple different businesses, many of which I sold and exited. And my real estate business was the most scalable. And in that business, I was helping people invest passively. I've raised over $64 million, from people who are looking to build wealth. I've made them over $20 million, which was the number that Faisal mentioned. And a lot of that is people that I met on WhatsApp or on social media that felt comfortable wiring me large sums of money to invest. And a lot of that is building trust, building credibility, having the right structures, understanding people's mindsets, all of the same things that I would argue happens when you're talking to a coach. So I'm more than happy to dive in further. I know Faisal's going to ask me some really insightful questions, and hopefully ultimately for both of us, we're just here to provide you value as you continue to scale.
Yeah, well, I love that you have the numbers backing it because your claims are big too in the process, so which you have the evidence behind it, which is really cool. So you've actually raised over 64 million and your clients have made 22 million. That's a big distinction. That's even a bigger number than what we're talking about. And also the way you framed it is that you're meeting people through WhatsApp, social media, those kind of areas. And we're talking anywhere from, you said, from 5K all the way to $100,000 that people would be wiring you for an investment, which are big numbers. A couple of things I want to clarify. Can you share a little bit about who these people are and what's their background demographic?
Yeah,
and where do they hang out?
Sure. So I guess to start, those investors, they're typically investing anywhere from 5K to, let's say, 5 million, right? So that's the range in terms of like high ticket products. That would be probably more in the ultra high ticket space. These people are typically people who are professionals. They're typically very good at what they do. And they typically realize that they feel some sort of version of what we would call like stuck. They feel like they're progressing in life, but it's not reflected in their personal finances, because the product that I help them with is personal finances. So it's to say, hey, what are you doing right now? What is your current state? What is the future state that you want to be in? What are your goals? And how do we get there? And if I'm not able to clearly understand that client journey, then I'm not clearly able to help them. And then they should not be working with me. So in terms of, their background, they could be a nurse, they could be a doctor, they could be an engineer, they could be an IT professional. In terms of what they're doing day to day, they're working and most of their income is coming from their W-2 income. Where they're investing, typically it's in the stock market. Typically they don't know exactly where. They're not happy with the performance. So there's some current pain. But when you're making 250K plus a year, Faisal, and you have all of your needs met and you have some ability to travel, etc., you don't feel pain, typically. But if 33% of those people making 250K plus a year live paycheck to paycheck, there must be some sort of anxiety. There must be some sort of pain. And to some degree, for the coach that's listening to this, it's important to understand your product. It's important to understand what people experience in their current state and how your product might be able to help them. Like everyone would know going to the gym, if you're a traditional coach, everyone would know that there's a lot of positive benefits you feel after working out. But you can't pitch somebody that online without really understanding, their mindset to ultimately get them in a position where they can benefit that positive experience. For me, in theory, what I'm doing is I'm selling investment services. I'm not going to go to somebody, Faisal, and say, hey, you're guaranteed to make 10% return no matter what, because that's not only illegal, but it's also reckless, and it's just not how I built my brand and how I do right by people. What I do is I say, hey, all investments carry risk, so let's talk about the risks. This is the work you need to do to show up. This is the work I need to do to show up. You need to wire capital, and that's it. It's 100% passive for you. I need to go and actually create value. I need to go find the right projects, create value in the project level so that the project makes money, so that you ultimately make money. And that's why, Faisal, like when I talk about metrics, I talk about how many people I work with and how much money they've made. So I'm saying, hey, I work with more than 291 people and they've made over $20.2 million. I don't talk about doors that I own because those doors could not be cash flowing, right? You have to talk about like metrics that make sense to you as a person, but then also think through what makes sense to the listener. If I said I own 1,723 plus units, that would sound good to people. But to me, it doesn't make sense because some of those units could be mid-construction. Some of those units could be negative cash flow. It's like, I'm sure there's an equivalent for the guy who is taking this, workout supplement, but it actually doesn't help them. And the people who are in the workout space would know, hey, there's actually negative side effects to these supplements, etc. So for me, Faisal, and for the audience as coaches, I think you guys know your products better than me. And it's to say, how can you communicate the value that you're providing to your client in a way that is unambiguous, right? I'm not talking about the amount their net worth appreciated. I'm not saying, hey, their net worth grew by 35 million, because that's not liquid. They can't pay bills with, an increased net worth. You can only pay bills with like your actual distributions, the actual money you made. Just like if you were saying, hey, somebody's going to lose 20 pounds in 2 weeks, that's something credible that they can actually build that future state around.
We'll come back to, because that's a big challenge for coaches. It's one thing to communicate personal finance because there are numbers attached to it. People understand the process of it. It's a whole other thing to communicate how a coach helps somebody, for example, solve relationship problems, or help them clarify their vision forward, or help them achieve certain goals. And of course, you can put metrics to those as well, but we'll talk about that. But I'm curious, and I want to backtrack to what do you think are the biggest challenges in selling a high ticket offer? What has been for you?
I think it's a really good question, Faisal. And I think the answer is a bit annoying. I think the reality comes like personal clarity. If you don't know yourself and you're trying to sell a high ticket product, you're trying to sell something based on your understanding of somebody else. It's a lot easier to just radically know yourself and just position yourself in life so you attract people that think similar to you, and you're just selling yourself every day. You're showing up to the call, 100% authentically Faisal or 100% authentically Mustafa, and you're talking about your product and the benefits your product has in a way that resonates with you, then your conversion rate is through the roof because you don't have to think about objections that you've never heard before. You're answering the same objections that you yourself have when you're thinking of buying that product. When I'm thinking of investing, there's certain things I look at. Those are the things that I talk about. Because I already know the questions subconsciously and in my gut that the investor is going to ask or the person's going to ask, I'm able to convert that person more efficiently, and I'm able to actually create value for them more efficiently because they can't see the value if they don't take that first step, which is, trying the product. In my case, investing. In somebody else's case, it might be like, coaching or...
You remind me of something Alex Hormozi said, is that most of the objections, most people talk about in sales, how do I deal with objections? Is like most objections are that you don't know how to deal with. Those are your own objections that you haven't dealt with. And it's actually one of the things we share with coaches, that if you have actually never invested in coaching yourself, it'll be very hard for you to sell the program. And that's the problem, that one of the first problems they run into, coaches, is that they haven't actually spent higher or invested higher on a coaching program than they're comfortable with. And so when the time comes when they're selling that, they don't know subconsciously how to answer those, or you said in their gut, they don't know how to answer to, like, what would your objection be to a high ticket program? And I remember going through this process. I've had to hire coaches for pretty much everything, for my relationship with my wife, counseling, for my business, mentors, coaches for my performance, coaches on the nervous system side, like all, because I struggled with each one of those. Now, that didn't stop me from building a business, but as I was doing it, it made me feel more credible, and it helped me understand, like, well, why am I looking for this? Why would I not spend this? And in fact, one of the coaches that I had hired, it was a very famous character whose programs were very high ticket, much more so than any other coach I hired, because of the credibility. I regretted it later because that person didn't end up being a really good coach. But I had to go through that whole journey, and I actually talk about that quite a bit, even in my own sales process. In fact, the way I structured my community is that part of the reason why I bring different kind of coaches around my own community is that I had to go through spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I struggled to find the right support. And when I offer the package, it actually includes multiple coaches. It doesn't include, and I don't charge them for it until they're satisfied for it. And that came from my own experience. A lot of times that came from my own experience of seeking the support that I needed, which I love. I mean, that's such an important piece of it. And investing is not that different, is that when you go through that journey, I mean, there are so many investors I work with, sometimes they haven't done the due diligence on the deal. Sometimes they haven't done the due diligence on the team that's going to be operating that thing. Sometimes they haven't looked at the numbers the right way. Sometimes they haven't had the strategy right. So once they go through that stuff, and for example, they're raising capital for something, how can they deal with objections? Well, if they've gone through it, they know how to talk to them.
No, I couldn't say it better myself, Faisal. And it's a bit unfortunate that you have to go through that negative experience to realize what the process should be to kind of ensure a positive experience. I think fundamentally, when you mentioned that coach that had positioned himself the right way and that charged a lot, I think that resonates for a lot of people. Subconsciously, there's the idea that if I'm spending more, I'm getting more better quality product. And that's not the case at all. There's no connection with like price and value. And then the other piece is, hey, if you position yourself at a very premium level with a lot of social proof, then people are going to think you're good at what you do just because you have good marketing. But marketing, sales, and actually delivering a quality product are three different things, right? So for me, what I focused on most of my life, Faisal, is like building a very good product with the idea of like product-led growth. Hey, I'm going to have a track record. I'm going to have an option for people to make money passively, and they're going to make above market returns, and that product itself will attract more people and it will grow organically. And then you get to a point, Faisal, where you realize, hey, marketing is important. Hey, I need to have a social presence, even though that's not something I enjoy at all, Faisal. But that's part of the growth of like, you don't know what you don't know. And I think as a coach, right, whatever product you have, it's just, hey, I'm going to be very aggressive in having the best product possible. And as I feel like my product is much better than the average in the marketplace, I'm going to start working on marketing. I'm going to start working on sales. I'm going to start working on these other skills to talent stack to then be in a position where you will be unstoppable over time. It's one of those things that I think a coach or any professional's journey is one that you need to be improving 1% every day, and then you will see the benefit compound and stack over time.
Yeah, I love that. You mentioned two very powerful, important things. One is that you're talking to the right people. So you mentioned 250K above. They have to be making that. So you're only talking to those people. You're not. I mean, nobody's gonna afford if they're making 50K and they're living paycheck to paycheck. They're not gonna. And this is actually one of the mistakes coaches make. They will go to a bunch of people who are struggling and they're empathetic to their journey, but usually they probably need therapy. Usually they probably need support from their family and community. They probably don't need coaching at that level. It's usually and it's very similar interestingly, those who invest in coaching, they tend to be more successful. It's counterintuitive because most people are like, well, no, that person needs help. No, those who invest in coaching, they actually understand the value of them saving time, money, and energy. And the reason why they are actually doing better on the finance side is because they have understood that. And so they're always seeking ways to optimize their quality of experience, their relationships, their finances, their time, all of it. So that's the first piece. The other piece, hold on. Let's dig into this one, then we'll go to that. I don't want to jumble the two sides, but so the question that a lot of coaches ask about this piece is, how do I find those people? Like, how do you get around talking to people who are worth 250K? What if I don't have that in my network?
So it's a great question, Faisal. I think first and foremost, I push against the grain on a lot of things, in the sense that I don't work with just people who are worth 250K plus. I work with the guys who are maybe worth 5K and they've invested 5K. So I have those types of clients too, because my mindset is, let me help as many people as possible and let me help people on like financial literacy. That's my goal.
Okay.
The product that I sell for free is
that's your
literacy.
Overarching
my overarching
purpose.
Exactly. My purpose is just helping people with financial literacy. I built out a brand, My Fin Journey, that runs its own podcast that you've been on as well, that really focuses on financial literacy. That's the goal. That's where I want to spend 80% plus of my time. The 20% of my time that I spend that monetizes more than 80% is real estate. That's where I've made people money, a lot of money, and those are the metrics that I cite to say, hey, I'm really good at personal finances and making people money. I say that to have credibility for why you should listen to me on the free stuff that I don't monetize, because otherwise nobody values free things, unfortunately, and that's a psychological barrier that people have. But I'm not going to belabor those points because you asked a very good question that's relevant to the audience, so I want to focus on that. How do you find people that are worth 250K plus or that are making 250K plus a year that have money to invest in coaching? First of all, even those people most likely are not going to invest in coaching because there's a huge mindset gap. When you're talking to somebody, in my humble opinion as a coach, what you want to do is you want to firmly establish that that person is very good at what they do and they don't need coaching. They don't need coaching, but it will take them 10 years of decent amount of effort to upskill them the way that a coach can upskill them in probably 1 to 3 years. So how valuable is the 7 to 9 years you're saving? It's very valuable because you're making 250K plus a year. You don't want to focus on this one thing that you haven't had improvement on, because if you wanted to focus on it, you would have already been focusing on it. So you want to uncover that pain point, that gap, and you kind of need to respectfully like pick a couple layers deep, because most people don't know themselves well enough to be able to identify their gaps. So you're getting on that call, trying to call them and trying to close them in one call, which is not necessarily strategic, to say, hey, you really need this coaching service. But if you haven't spent the time to understand them, to get to know them and where they're at, it's going to be very hard to sell to that person. So it's 2 or 3 different layers. First, you want to be talking to that person who's making enough money, quote unquote, to be able to afford your product, let's say 5K or whatever the product is. And then you want to say like, hey, is this actually important to them? And if it's not important to them, how can I effectively communicate how much value this can create? Let's say, Faisal, you mentioned like a relationship coach. Let's say you're talking to somebody with relationship challenges in their personal life, and work is their escape from their personal challenges. So they're a workaholic, not because they enjoy what they do, but because they're seeking refuge from a suboptimal home life. And you're saying, hey, like you enjoy your work, work is your refuge, etc. What if you were just in a position to solve your home problems and you ended up making more money at work? How would that future look? You didn't have stress at home, so you came home to a calm environment. You're probably just that enough, if unpacked strategically, would sell somebody. But now you're working less and you're making more money. And for a lot of people, that sounds impossible. But you're making more money because you're delivering a better product at work, because you're actually able to focus on your work instead of part of your body always being in a fight or flight type environment where you're just constantly and chronically stressed. And that's, one way to like strategically pitch that person on relationship advice. But if you haven't gone through that conversation of discovery, if you haven't understood the pain points of that potential, future clients, then it's really hard to understand their motivations for even getting on the call, right? They could be getting on the call because they're curious, because they saw your ad or something. What I would recommend doing is in your sequence, let's say it's like a calendar link or whatever, in your sequence, you want to be educating people, in my humble opinion, about your product. And through that process, people come to your calls more knowledgeable about your product and they kind of know what they want. And either they're effectively able to communicate that, or you're effectively able to glean that through your questions. But a lot of it is a conversation of discovery to say, hey, we have 30 minutes, we have 45 minutes. I'm here to help you. Just let me know how I can help. And if you've done a little bit of research before getting on that call, let's say this guy's an IT executive. Hey, I know you're an IT executive. I know a lot of people are stressed that AI is stealing their jobs. Talk to me about what's going on, because your industry, your specific job might be a little different. Like, you want to kind of tease out that conversation. You want to lead with emotion and feelings, not because you yourself are an emotional person, quote unquote, but because people make sales and buying decisions based on emotion and justify it with logic. So you have to get that conversation started, even if like you're somebody like me who just thinks people make decisions based on logic. You kind of have to check your feelings and your thought processes at the door a little bit to say, hey, this is what I think, but is this actually accurate? What is the data saying? And then really drive it, your process through a more data-driven approach, if that makes sense, Faisal.
It does. I want to dig a little bit deeper in here, and then I'll fill in a couple of the gaps for coaches in there too. Let me put it. Let's say you were a coach. You brought up the relationship coaching thing. Let's say your products are anywhere from $5,000-$10,000 packages. Let's say you started. You feel roughly confident enough that you can support people, and you have no brand. You don't have too many people in your network that know you about it. How would you get started? What would you do?
So first of all, I would unpack that, Faisal. I'd say, hey, I'm charging 5 to 10K. Let's just say I'm charging 10K. Let's say I'm charging 10K, and is that 10K a month, 10K for the year, 10K for 6 sessions?
Let's say it's a 3 to 6 month package.
Okay. So what I would do is I would charge people monthly, even if that affects conversion. Because I'm right now, at the time of this recording, I'm 32 years old. I'm going to be in this business for the next 30 years. Because I'm going to be in this business for the next 30 years, I don't need to make a killing today. I don't need to be paid today. I can have two options. I can have, hey, pay me more, but pay me monthly, or pay me less and pay me upfront. So that already increases your conversion. Can it be confusing for people? Sure. But you can say, hey, listen, we have two options. Either you can pay me $1,500 a month for, 6 months or whatever, or you can pay me the 10K. And then accordingly, you're building out your product so that people pay you more if they're paying monthly and they have flexibility. And let's say they're paying with credit card and they're getting points, then they're paying the 3%, transaction fee, right? Like, people have more convenience. But then if you're getting paid less money today, then you need to charge them more over time. And that's why the discounted option is, hey, you just pay me today and just pay me less. And you're building that out for people. So now the barrier to enter is lower. Now, when they're paying you, let's say, $1,500, $2,000 a month, whatever the numbers you agree to that makes sense for your business model are, you're using them to get like testimonials as well, and to get referrals as well, and to say, hey, listen, like, we're working on this coaching, we're working on this relationship stuff. I understand that this is like very sensitive stuff that you don't feel comfortable sharing with the world. I get that. But you definitely know people in your circle who are struggling. So when that happens, just feel free to refer me, because I would hate for your friends to get divorced. And that's really what you're talking about. Like, the outcome is horrible. And your goal there is to really keep families together. So it's to position yourself like that, to say, hey, listen, I'm here to help families and help communities, but I can't help everybody. And I think for coaches, to some degree, what I would do is I would create a lot of high value content for free on LinkedIn and on Instagram. Instagram would get you more virality. So you can start there if like metrics and things are important to you in terms of like likes and shares and having a strong social media presence. But I would argue, and I can be wrong, Faisal, I would argue that the client value, like the transactional value, etc., on Instagram is going to be lower. I don't see that many relationship coaches on LinkedIn. So that I would go to LinkedIn, especially if you're in the 5-10K range. If you're like a coach that is helping people get like a coach that works at the gym, right? Like a fitness coach. I think Instagram is probably where most people are spending their time, and it's probably where you'll get maybe more traction. But even then, what I would do is I would take like maybe a Alex Hermosi approach and really build a Grand Slam offer and really position yourself that, hey, I am the coach that works with people that have less than 30 minutes a day to get into the physical condition that they want to be in. I only work with and have a very strict buy box of professionals making 250K plus. I'll do XYZ to show you the value that I'm creating. So I think, Faisal, it's one of those things where you have to have a very clear buy box because you don't have infinite time. But then within that buy box, if you can create more flexibility for a person, especially when you have no track record, because part of what you said is, hey, I have no credibility. When you have no credibility, you're desperate. Own that. You don't have clients, you're not monetizing, you need to be flexible. Until you can say, hey, I'm genuinely better than most people in the market, and here's my track record. So now I'm going to charge people more. Now I'm going to be less available. Now I'm going to be less flexible. I think that that's a privileged position to be in, but sometimes we start the business by saying, hey, I'm only going to attract people that are willing to pay 5K for my service, but you don't have any transformations. You don't have the marketing package to justify that price point. I think at that point you need to say, hey, maybe I'm going to change up my offer. Maybe I'm going to work for free. Maybe I'm going to work at a cheaper price to get more proof of concept, to get more testimonials, to get more clients, to know that my product is actually worth 5K or 10K or whatever the number is, because the market is going to decide your value. If you're in a situation where you have no free time, you can raise your prices, and then you will have some free time and you will have clients that are the right clients for you as you scale. Or you can figure out other ways to scale and build out a team and keep your prices where they are. It just depends, Faisal, on how that individual coach wants to grow their business. I would struggle to say there is a one size fit all situation, because it all comes down to like the individual coach and their mindset and their goal, and then really being authentic to themselves. That'll enable them to attract the right types of clients, and those clients will always be the right type of client as that individual grows and changes, because the client is also going through that same journey of growing and changing.
Yeah, no, I love, and there's so much gold in there, and it kind of calls out some, I mean, generally in business, but even for coaches, there's a blind spot that coaches have, not from like a malice place, but because they've gone through most coaches that I know who are in the profession, they tend to be heart-centered. They've gone through their own struggle and journey, whether in their relationship or in their personal internal struggle with their own thoughts and emotions or depression or whatever it might be. And over time, they realize, you know what? They would love to help other people. They go get some kind of training in the process, and they have their own experience too. But the problem is what you said, they don't have proof of concept. And they're thinking that, you know what, it was so valuable for me, it should be valuable for the next person. But they're including their whole 10-year, 20-year journey. And like, of course, that was valuable. But now you're packaging that journey into like a few months. You don't know if it'll work for the next person, even if you've gone through the training. And I love that you said proof of concept. This is one of the things that we do in our community, is that any coach can go out there. It's hard, but any coach can go out there and get one client here and there or two clients here and there. But to make that a repeatable, sustainable process, that requires a very different approach. It requires you to test out your offer. And unfortunately, when you go look at some of the marketers who teach this stuff and also even coaching programs, they will go there and the person who has a program, they will share a number with them. And for example, I have coaches will come in. I'm like, what's your package? How much are you selling your package? They'll be like $6,000. Like, great. Where did you get that number from? Well, this person, Bren Burchard, told me, or somebody else. And of course, they're just giving them, they're not sharing it as a way, this is the exact price. They're saying this can be the average of a really good coach. Now, in their mind, they're a really good coach. But I asked them, like, how many people have you worked with? I'm not saying you're not a bad coach. How many people have you created results for? And when I ask these, they're almost zero to minimal. I'm like, so how do you know that's the price point? And that's where and then when I initially pushed them on it, I'm like, what if you sold it for 2,000 or 1,000 instead? Not forever, for the next few months until you build enough credibility, proof of concept, and your impact. And the cool thing in business is that you could double or triple your prices in the next few months. It doesn't work the way paycheck works. As long as you've actually created value, and that comes from proof of concept. That means that you've actually been able to serve people. And you also added the piece of other people are recommending your services to other people.
Now you can charge more. Unfortunately for the new person, but now you can charge more.
Yeah, and I've had clients who've been with me for 5+ years. I've raised it a little bit, but a lot of it I've kept it because I've loved working with them. But new clients pay triple their rate. But I mean, part of it is they've trusted me for so long. They've given me so many referrals that I didn't want to raise it too much for them, and it was worth it for my time and relationship for me to stay within there. But they've also given me a lot of many referrals in the process. I've also gotten a lot, and I haven't forgotten that. And that's the key. I'd say businesses, especially high ticket, at least most of my programs are high ticket. What I've learned is this is a relationship business. You are constantly building a relationship with people. You might not coach somebody, but you still have a relationship with them. Why would they recommend you to the next person, whether it's be through their audience, to their family, to their friends? There has to be a relationship built. And in the process, have you been able to serve anybody? In the process, the person you've served, have they referred you to any? That process is fairly long. Not everybody's going to refer you. Not everybody's going to buy your product. In fact, most people, you mentioned that only about 20% of your effort gives you the paid, the money, the revenue that you generate. 80% of your efforts are completely, it just builds the brand. It builds value out in the marketplace from a marketing and brand standpoint. And that's the part that a lot of coaches underestimate, that it actually takes quite a bit of time. And this one of the things we teach in the sales process is that don't be in a hurry to close people. Don't. And again, they're taught this, like on the first call, make your offer. I'm like, you don't need to do that. This is a longer term journey. And like you said, and I love what you said, that if this is going to be a 30-year journey for you, why are you in a hurry to do this? And there was one of my mentors who said this, like, if you need money right now, go get a job and dedicate part of your time building your business until you have that proof of concept. Then you can charge more and you can do that. And Alex Hormozi did the same thing. He was struggling. He cut down his expenses to the point where he had to survive on bare minimum, but he built it steadily until he built enough credibility, enough trust with his customers that he got more and more people in the door. And that's what he teaches as well. And pretty much any ethical sales people that I know, or marketers that I know, is that the market ultimately decides whether there's value in your product or service. You don't get to decide that. And unfortunately, for a lot of coaches, because it's so tied to their identity of 20 years of growth, they cannot separate their identity from you're selling a service. Yeah, of course, it needs to add value, but that's different. It doesn't reduce your value as a human being. And that's one of the first things I asked them. I'm like, you need to separate your identity as a person going through all that growth to have come to this point. Let people decide whether it's valuable or not. And I love both of those areas. The other one we dug into I'll just add this part. Timeline matters. So if you're going to do on social media, as you recommended, whether it's Instagram, LinkedIn, that's a longer timeline process. because it's harder to build trust, at least in my experience, has been harder to build trust online versus if somebody comes from your network, because they're borrowing trust from you. If somebody that you know, they've referred you to the next person, there's borrowed trust there. So it can be 1 to 3 weeks to 1 to 2 months you're getting clients. Versus if you're on social media, you're consistently showing up until you build enough of a relationship with what you're promoting, so they can get on a call with you, and so you can support them. And I would suspect that's what you meant by you only taking inbound, because you've built that relationship with them online versus cold. Would you say that? I want to clarify that.
Yeah, I think it's a great question that you're asking, Faisal. I think fundamentally your initial premise is, hey, you have a stronger relationship with people that know you already in real life versus people that meet you on social media. So you will have easier sales with people that already know you in your network. I think that premise makes sense, but that doesn't mean that the opposite isn't also true. Let's say, for example, Faisal, I post every day on LinkedIn, Monday through Friday at 8 a.m., which I do. Let's say you read my post every day, which nobody should be doing. You should be more busy than consuming content, to clarify. Especially if you're watching this, you should be watching this and implementing. You should not be like watching endless content, right? Like focus on your business. But if you are doing that, you're now reading what I think in your voice to yourself. So you're subconsciously selling yourself on my beliefs. When you unpack that and you really reflect on it, that's really powerful. When you go and you buy a book and you read that book, you've now established that the author of that book is at a higher status than you. When you're reading someone's LinkedIn content, when you're watching someone's YouTube content, etc. YouTube is a bit different because you're listening, but specifically when you're reading content. When you're reading content, especially in the medium term, it has a very powerful effect because you establish the writer of that content as somebody worth learning from. Now I've become a mentor to everybody that reads my content. That doesn't mean I'm good at what I do. So the marketing and distribution channel is one thing. To me, the main thing is like have a good product. But we're avoiding that. We're skipping that for now. Just talk about marketing, right? When you're positioning yourself on like LinkedIn in this example, you're positioning yourself as a thought leader. And you're a thought leader to anybody reading your content. If your content sucks, if you're not adding value to people, people will stop reading it and you'll be a content leader to less people. Fundamentally, from my perspective, Faisal, you can definitely have sales and close clients in your network, but maybe you just don't want to. Like for me, I'm a very private person. So it was easier for me to sell on WhatsApp or to sell on LinkedIn than it is to sell in real life. To actually talk to people about
help me
product.
understand that part.
Yep.
So if you didn't want,
Sure.
and that's actually a objection coaches have too, is that they don't want to sell to their own network. And I have a way around that, but I want to hear, how long did it take you from zero to when you started making money, when you sold on WhatsApp and online, and what did that look like?
Yeah, I would say I raised my first 1.5 million in less than a year online, while also having another job, like a traditional W-2 job, like you mentioned in that Alex Ramosi example, and having other businesses that I also ran, like an e-commerce company. So for me, Faisal, in theory, I was quite successful early on, and I was quite blessed. And I did it by leveraging other people's strengths. What I did was I found people who were trusted in those circles, and I built a relationship with them where they trusted me to a position where they felt comfortable investing in my products. And then I used that social credibility to then raise more capital, to then be in a position to make people money. And when I made people money, I just talk about how much money other people are making. All of my conversations is how much money you will make. None of my conversations are how much money I make. Yeah. Maybe 20% of people talk about how I get paid or ask me questions about how I get paid. And I say, I get paid after you've made all of your money. So you invested 100K, you made 100K back. Now I start getting paid. That's, like most products are like that. So now in that situation, Faisal, I'm taking on a lot of risk. It's all performance driven. You might not be able to do that as a coach. You might not be able to say, hey, you have challenges in your marriage, or hey, you don't have a six pack. Pay me $1 million when you get a six pack. Pay me $1 million when your marriage is stable. You might not be able to do that because it's harder to quantify, but then figure out how you're going to quantify it. Hey, you have stubborn fat that hasn't left your body for the last 30 years. because that stubborn fat isn't a diet issue. It isn't a workout issue. It's stress. We're going to alleviate and address your stress, and your whole life will get better. But you have to stick with me for 6 months, and this is what it's going to look like. There's going to be, 1 month where you're excited, 3-4 months where you're going to see no progress, 5th and 6th month you're going to see exponential progress. And I'm just making this example up, Faisal. But the point for the coaches listening to this is to really understand your product, to really understand the client journey, to say, hey, my product might be a $5,000 product, but I've never sold anyone for 5K, so it's not worth 5K today. It will be worth 5K in the future. Instead, let me start a community where people are paying $1 a month, and I have 5,000 members in that community. There has to be a solution out there to monetize off your product. But if you're focusing on the monetization aspect first, instead of focusing on the quality of your product first, you're not going to have long-term success in the marketplace, in my humble opinion, Faisal. I think it's really important to charge people whatever you think you're worth, and that's an individual decision. But the most important thing is whatever you're charging people, the value needs to be much more, where it's a no-brainer, where it's like, hey, I'm spending $5 million with Mustafa, but I'm making 10% a year passively, or I'm making, more, whatever your numbers are, right? And for that coach, it's a qualitative answer. But if that guy is making $5 a year or $5 million a year, what is the value of quality of life for that person? And that's what you want to target, to say, hey, you have relationship challenges. Hey, you're not in the best physical health. Let's unpack that. Imagine you got divorced. How would it affect your kids? How much money would you pay to have that issue resolved? And I'm not asking this from a sales perspective to sell you an expensive product. I'm asking you from a values perspective to say that no matter how much you spend, if you're not willing to put in the work, nothing will get better. And all of our questions in this call is designed to understand if we're a good fit, because I can only work with people that are willing to show up. In my case, showing up is clicking the wire button. In a coach's situation, the product is much harder, in my opinion, to see transformation, because the client needs to show up every day. And when the client doesn't show up or has a bad day, the coach needs to be there to wrap the arm around the client to say, hey, we all have bad days. This is a journey. You're looking for long-term improvement over 6 months or however long the course is, or over 10 years, whatever it is, to say that things will get better. Your home life is bad. You're fat right now. You have high BMI. You're not, putting on the muscle mass that you wanted. Don't worry. Just stay the course and you will see positive results.
Yes, there are days when I ask myself, why am I in the coaching world? Because it's probably one of the hardest things to sell. Because like you said, the transformation process can take time. But one of the reasons why I've stuck to it is because I love this. So this is my path. This is where I've gotten results. And I always tell people, if I were to start another business, it would be the simplest thing possible that people know ahead of time what it is, and I can simply tell them this is what it is. That would be much simpler to sell. So that part, I completely see that. But I want to dig into what you said. You said that in what you would do is you would build relationship with these, and I'm guessing these are people who have credibility in that marketplace, and you would get them to promote you. Now, are you talking about podcasts, communities? Like, what are you referring to?
Good question, Faisal. What I would say is, again, maybe give me another example of a type of coach in the community, and I can really tailor it to that coach.
So let's say somebody is a mindset coach, and they're not specific on the relationship. They're not they are taking people through a journey to clarify their vision, their strategy, their perspective, living a more intentional life, and of course relationship and other things, but it's more generalized.
So let's say you're that mindset coach. Let's say you're that mindset coach that is deeply religious. Then I would go to all the religious institutions in your area, both of your own religion and of others, but ideally your own, like your specific background, and say, hey, look, I specialize in mindset coaching. I notice a lot of the congregation is struggling with X. Let me know if I should set up, monthly mindset coaching sessions to help the community. So what you're doing is you're saying, hey, I'm a mindset coach and I need leads. And maybe I don't want to charge people. Or I need leads and maybe I do want to charge people. It just depends on your growth strategy. I would say free is always better. and then you can qualify them and upsell them later. And along the way, you're teaching them how good you are by proof of concept. And then along the way, you're saying, hey guys, we've been doing this for about a year and it's helped 100 people. It's helped 100 people over a year, and these are the transformations they've seen. Now we're going to start charging, and the amount you pay is going to the congregation, right? So you're charging, but you're not charging for yourself. Maybe because you have your own money sensitivity issues that you're not aware of, right? Like I told you, I don't like to sell, so I don't position myself as selling ever. Right? It's like an investment opportunity to help that person. I'm not selling anything. I'm helping that person. Right? So you kind of want to understand your gaps so that way you can actually drive, revenue creation. But the most important thing is always to have it, asynchronous, to provide more value than the cost of the service that you're providing. Right? So that's one example, let's say, where you're maybe into religion.
So before you go to the next example, why would that person, and I'm answering their objections, the coach's objections, because I've gotten them directly. So why would that person allow you to go in front of that congregation, even if you said that, oh, well, I can add value, but you don't know them, you're maybe part of the same religion, but they don't know you yet. Why would they allow you to go in front of their congregation?
You need to understand what their goals are. Their goal for their congregation is to have a vibrant congregation. So you need to pitch them on some. Faisal, this is a very good question, but if somebody can't do this, there's an issue in their sales process, because you're telling a congregation leader, I'm going to add value to your congregation for free, and it's not going to cost you anything. The congregation already has a fixed rent or mortgage. You're not adding to that bill. You're adding to like the electricity bill. That's it. Right? So if you can't close this congregation person on a free service that could eventually monetize for the congregation, then there's big challenges in your like sales process. And it comes down to like your self-belief with love and respect, because you're saying, hey, I'm very good at what I do, and I'm offering this for free to help the community. And the congregation leader is saying no. That means your social credibility is even worse than you thought, because you couldn't get somebody to give you something for free, which was access to their community, which is valuable. You should actually be paying them. If they knew how valuable their community was, they would be charging you, because they would say, no, you're advertising at my community center. My congregation is more valuable. I haven't seen your proof of concept. You can do it, but pay me $5,000. Like there's a number, because you're getting access to their community. But the congregation leader is not like a business owner typically, so they don't think about like the value of their leads per se, the value of their congregation. But to really answer and drive down your question, Faisal, it's to say that you need to have a conversation with the congregation leader to say, hey, your congregation is empty except Sundays. So what if people started coming on Fridays? What would that look like? What if you had more engagement in your community? What if we built this out so that there is, a yoga instructor on Mondays, a mindset teacher on Tuesdays, and you could build out like a whole plan for them to just have a vibrant community, because at the end of the day, this community leader is like the CEO of a company. He wants people to show up to work. He wants to be providing value. And it's important for you as a mindset coach to say, hey, the religion is important, for example, because we said religion. The religion is important, and part of the religion is that adversity helps you grow. If people aren't able to connect their strong mindset with their journey of growth and self-discovery, then how are they going to understand scripture? So Faisal, I think it's a very good question. And I think it's hard to tell people that this is a dumb question, which is not what I'm saying at all. But it's to say that if you can't sell somebody on something for free, then it's an education for me as a salesperson to say, hey, I was offering something for free and people didn't value it. Clearly, I haven't established how amazing I am. If LeBron James called you and said, hey, Faisal, I'm offering free, three-pointer tutoring, coaching, whatever, you're like, hey, I'll be there tomorrow. I'll be there in 5 minutes, because he's established his credibility to that level. And the goal is not for you to be like LeBron James of, mindset coaching, but it's to say that your offer needs to be so good that people feel dumb saying no. And that's kind of why I said start with free, and then start with monetize for the community center versus monetizing for yourself. Because if you're always trying to monetize for yourself, if everything is always like a short-term transaction, you'll still grow, you'll still be successful, you'll be fine. But you will definitely leave a lot of money on the table, because you wouldn't have built those transformative relationships with those other clients that maybe couldn't have afforded your service, your product, but they had a massive network and they could have been amazing advocates for your business as you scale.
Awesome. No, I love that. I love that you went deeper into it, and it's so loud and clear how important sales is, regardless of whether you charge somebody or not. So coaches are afraid of that word sales, and
So
they're
am
in
I.
business. Which,
Yeah.
but the thing is, they avoid it in all kinds of ways. I'm like, whether you charge somebody your money or not, you're going to be selling. You're going to be selling your brand, yourself, your skills, your ability, and what you demonstrated there. And I love that even that in that scenario, there's a relationship being built. Which a relationship requires you to actually go there in that congregation and understand what's going on and be very observant of what the challenges are, and talk to the people that are running it. What are the before you even pitch anything, because you don't know their pain points, you don't know what their challenges are, or you don't know why would they buy it, and that requires you to actually. And the interesting thing is, these are all coaching skill sets, which we always tell them, like, that's the same as sales skill sets. You got to be present, you got to be observant, you got to ask questions, you got to understand what the challenges are before you go towards any kind of solution ever. But most coaches will hesitate. And there's a second piece of that. It actually takes a lot of courage to do things like this, because you're putting yourself on the line in those cases, saying that, you know what, I'm going to go add value to these people. And there's risk associated with that. I mean, even to this day, after 11 years of doing this, I have an event coming up within at an organization, and I've made a promise. I'd be like, I'm going to come talk to all of your executives, and at the highest level, 20, 25 leaders, and we're going to go from just dealing problems over and over to solutions. That's a claim. I better have a process that creates some kind of results. And there's a part of me that is scared of that. But there's a part of me is like, you know what? I've served other people. I can build this. I can work with them to come up with solution. But I'm the one who pitched this to the leader of the organization, and he was open to it because I had added value in a different way. Now, if I'm able to do this well, this will turn into a bigger contract. If I'm not able to do this well, it will kind of break down my credibility. I might even lose this contract in the process. And it's a risky situation. Even before this contract, the first time I took this leader through my coaching process, that was risky because he was connected to me by somebody in my network. And because of that, and this is a very important person, would I be able to add value to this person's life, team, business, whatever that is? And we're always selling the thing that would be valuable, and the problem is that sales stands out as you're giving something somebody, you're taking something from somebody. But if you frame sales as what you're describing, is that you're giving in the process, you're giving a lot more than what you're taking. In fact, most of what you will be giving in business will be free. I'd say for me, it's 90% of what I've done over the past over a decade is nobody has paid me out of 90% of the people. Only less than 10% of the people, it might even be less, who have ever paid me, but that's helped me build a sustainable business. And that's just how naturally business works. And the only challenge with the coaching business is that you have to put a lot of initial the time and energy required initially. I'd say the biggest difference is like, if you look at this pen, if you showed somebody, they know what this pen is, they know what it does. You tell somebody coaching, they have 10 different definitions in their mind. And you can keep talking about it, but you can actually just take them through that process and help them see, oh, this actually helps them. And that's why we make our process to be is that, hey, go and take people through your process, whether you're doing it in a group, one-on-one, online, in person. Demonstrate what you're saying, because most people have no idea what the hell coaching is. Even it's become better and better. Actually, in the past 3 years, it's been interesting. Out of the past 11 years, the past 3 years, I've had more and more clients come to me, which I'm happy about. They're like, just so you know, at some point in the sales process, I'm talking to another coach as well. That makes me happy, because that means the industry is becoming more known. Before that, nobody knew what the hell it was. And even that's more famous with athletes, with people at the highest positions, executives, CEOs, with investors, like people who are at high level positions, or there's a lot at stake and they want to save time and energy. they're learning more and more. But even then, if you look at the marketing of coaching, even you described so many different, half of those fall in, we don't call them coaching, we call them mentoring. The other half will be on the coaching side. And the big difference is mentoring involves a lot more advice giving, consulting type of work. Coaching involves getting the client to come to their solutions. And there is some mentoring involved even in the coaching process, but it's a lot more geared towards getting the client to come up with solutions while you're asking questions and going deeper into what they're going through. And that requires a very different approach. And it's hard to tell people, well, this is what you're going to gain unless you've walked them through it. Now, you don't have to do it one-on-one. I've actually gone and done live events and gone to other people's meetups. For example, in COVID, when all the events, everything shut down, I reached out to pretty much every real estate investor who was running a meetup. It's like, I'd love to come and just support them. They thought they were just getting a speaker. I just walked them through my coaching process. And at the end, I would have like, hey, here's my course. You can go through it on your own for free. And you'll gain the other piece of it that I can't cover here. And then I would reach out to them on the back end and support them. And from there, they would either buy into one of my programs or they would connect me with somebody. And I just did that over and over. Didn't cost me anything other than the courage to show up, the time and energy. But a lot of coaches will not do that. And they will. And what I meant by the social media side is they would just hide behind their posts. They will just post consistently, even though now it's becoming better and better with easier and easier with AI to post. And I see coaches all the time, they post for a good 3 months and they will stop because they don't get the results that they're looking for, but they haven't actually been in a conversation with anybody. That's not what you do, at least in the coaching world. There's one other thing that you mentioned. I want to stress on that is that ultimately what sells is our service and product. And like I don't think anything beats any kind of marketing system beats your product being a really good product that actually adds value to people. And that's what you essentially said, that you lead with the quality of your product. And you're not going to start with a perfect product. Well, you will keep refining it as you help people with it. And I would guess that that's what you've been doing as you've been in your own business. And that's what I've been doing. If I go back to 7 years ago or 8 years ago, I used to think I was a good coach until I started connecting with clients, and I struggled within sessions myself as a coach. To this day, I struggle with certain clients, certain organizations, because I'm learning and growing in those fields. Nobody's going to be perfect, but you're constantly willing to grow in that area. I wanted to just add that point around the product and service, that ultimately what sells, what gives you referrals, what gives you more people and networks, access to other people's networks, is the quality of your products and service that you set. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, Faisal, I think I want to circle back to what you said about sales, right? Sales being the idea that somebody is paying me for my service and I'm giving them access to coaching, real estate investing, making money passively, etc. The flip side is, hey, this person invested time to listen to my pitch. Or this person invested time to get to know me. This person makes $1,000 an hour. How am I worth that $1,000 that he's just spent to get to know me for an hour?
Yeah.
I'm not, right? Part of what you said is, hey, I'm very good at what I do, and I have free products that educate people. And I think that's all proof of concept. That's all creating value. That's all baked into your price tag of, hey, I charge 5 to 10K, whatever the number is. And fundamentally, when you are paying that, you're not only getting access to the free stuff, which maybe 80% of people don't do, the 20% of that do it find immense value, much more than the time that they spent. So they're already like positive return on investment, right? If their time is worth $20, $1,000, they're making more than that by doing this course. Now they're showing up to the paid high ticket offer, ready to get that value if they actually pay for it. And when they pay for it, they will get even more value out of it than what they paid. So it's one of those things to say that from a sales perspective, we think of sales as just like the exchange of money, but it's also the exchange of time. And that's really valuable. Like, I've been in a sales cycle where somebody is pitching me on LinkedIn services, and I go through their funnel, and part of their funnel was, hey, buy this book. So I bought the book. I read the book, created an immense amount of value for me because I implemented what the book said, etc. And I'm dyslexic, so I probably would not have bought a book in general because I just avoid reading. That book taught me nice shortcuts to learn and implement in my life without having to read. And the simple solution is just download Audible and buy the ebook. Great, simple solution that had never occurred to me before getting that book. Now that person whose product I never bought has easily added 100,000 plus to my bottom line. And her product was maybe like a $500 to $5,000 product that I never bought. But I'll always remember, and she won't know this until I tell her, but I'll always remember the value that her sales funnel added to my life. And she's no longer a LinkedIn coach. Now she's a different type of coach. But fundamentally, when you're a coach and when you're in your sales cycle, sometimes you'll add a lot of value for somebody and you'll never know. And this happens to me a lot, especially with like my educational content where I just educate people for free on mindset and financial literacy. Just yesterday, I was speaking at a conference and an individual says, "Hey, Mustafa, we spoke last year and I implemented what you said." That is super vague. It tells me nothing other than we spoke last year. I don't even remember what I told him. And he's like, "Here's the website I built. Here's the company that I built." And it translates, a random, unique dialect of Arabic. It takes like videos and pictures and translates everything in that image to Arabic, to this dialect that there is no written text online for. So it's like, hey, there's so many ways to monetize this. I don't even know if that's his goal. But hey, talk to these different companies that are using AI like this. And there's more resources for him to kind of continue to upskill and grow. But the advice that I'd given him was like, focus on learning yourself, understanding what you want to do. If this individual is learning Arabic and Arabic is important to him, then maybe you need a UI, UX product, like a visually appealing product that leverages your passion. And maybe that's where you'll be able to monetize more efficiently. For the coaches listening to this, or just anyone in general, it's to say fundamentally, like, what is the heart of your product? Who do you think you can help the most? How can you borrow credibility from somebody else? Like, let's say I know Faisal and I'm a part of his community. Maybe I need to go to Faisal and say, "Hey, Faisal, do you have time to serve all your clients?" Maybe that answer is no. Maybe I can just help Faisal serve his clients more efficiently. Or maybe somebody in Faisal's network doesn't have time, and I have time because I suck at sales, but I'm a good coach. So create strategic partnerships, right? And I think Faisal mentioned this as well when he talked about joining his coaching. You get access to other coaches that are very good at different aspects of coaching, right? So there's a situation where you can both be coaches, but you can serve the same client differently, and you can all grow together and create more value for the client. It's just like today, if you're going to buy a car, you would think about, what do I need this car for? And you'd buy a certain car. But at some point, if you scale, you would have maybe your weekend car, your convertible that you drive when the weather is nice, but it's not your daily driver. It's one of those situations to some degree that, depending on the client, and if we're talking about that 250K plus income earner clients, they're going to have a lot of different needs. If you're able to validate the success of coaching in one of those needs, then you're able to validate the success of coaching in all of those needs, as long as they realize what their needs are. And the even easier example of this is, forget the 250K income for a second and just focus on anybody that runs a team. That scholar, that cleric, that religious leader that I talked about in the community, he's probably not cleaning toilets. Maybe he is, but he's probably not. So he has a team. So you couldn't sell him on free services. You're just saying, "Hey, I'm just joining your team as a volunteer, and this is what I will work on. I will work on people coming to the congregation, coming to the building on days where you don't have sermons, or after your sermon, so that people stay longer and engage more." There has to be a way for you to structure it and for you to leverage credibility of other people in a collaborative way rather than a competing way. And part of that is to just simply say, circling back to that 250K plus income earner, or that person who runs a team, to say, "Hey, I'm a part of your team. You have somebody that files your taxes, it's not you. You have somebody who cleans your toilets, it's not you. You have somebody who, cooks your food, it's not you." Whatever that is, there are different gaps that you have for some reason or another decided aren't worth your time or aren't an effective use of your time. My job is just to help you perform better at your job. Your job is X. I'm just another part of your team. And give it a trial. Try me out for 3 months, 6 months. If it doesn't work, I'll give you your money back. Right? There has to be a risk reversal type situation to some degree to say, "Hey, I'm willing to put up or shut up. I'm willing to prove to you that I'm worth 10K or 100K, whatever your numbers are." And you can read that book and you can say, It was like Alex Hormozi's 100 Million Offers. I think for every person in coaching, it's a great book to read to really understand how to structure your product. To some degree, you want to get your product to a point where people feel stupid saying no. Imagine you're going to somebody, normally your product is 10K. You raise the price to 15K and you say, hey, 15K, if I don't deliver for you, you get your money back, right? Like we had initially talked about 2 tiers, right? Let's say a monthly where people are paying 1.5K or upfront where people are paying 10K. You could have a third tier. Hey, you want a money back risk guarantee? It's 15K. Why am I charging you more? Because, and then you figure out that what that because is. Because I believe in my product so much, but you don't believe in me. And honestly, I find that a bit insulting. So I just charge an extra 5K for the insult. However, you want to package it in a way that lands to, your client, your avatar, the person you're selling to. It's to say, hey, listen, I haven't had anyone actually request this refund before, but I'm willing to offer it for you. And maybe I would normally offer it at 15K, but I like the conversation so much, I'm willing to offer it at 12K, where normally no risk, guarantee, it's 10K. Now I'm saying, hey, if you want a full refund after 6 months, no problem, but I'm charging you 12K because I'm taking on that extra risk of you, potentially asking for it for a ludicrous reason that I will still honor and justify. So basically, I would say that there's a lot of ways to build that credibility for the listener, but it really circles back to like doing the hard work of coaching, of mindset, to really know yourself, to understand how you can efficiently show up in those conversations, and you can sell in a way that doesn't feel like selling.
Okay, well, I fully agree, and there was a lot of gold in there. I definitely recommend all 3 of his books: Alex Hormozi's The $1 Million Offer, Lead, and Money Models, the new one. I actually used one of the strategies recently of the money models, and I regularly listen to his stuff. I want to thank you for being here on our podcast and sharing such valuable knowledge, and like there's so much in there that coaches can implement. The question is, are you going to actually listen or do something with it? If you actually go and experiment with it, you will turn it into something. Like you mentioned, that person who just listened to you, don't even know what you said, but you went in there and implemented it. That happens all the time. And same thing when somebody will come to me after a while, it's like, oh, I listened to that thing and I applied it, and this happened, that, I'm like, I don't even know what that is, but I'm glad I helped in the process. But and I'll share one last thing. There was a coach that I had been following for 10 years. I never bought anything from him, but I sent hundreds of people to him. I ended up in one of his programs at some point that happened to be, I went in person, and I told him that, and he smiled. He's like, thank you for sending everybody. I mean, this is why this stuff works. Like, he never knew that he had a value, but I kept sending people to him because his product was so useful and helpful for me, and that's really cool. I'd love to get you to share where can coaches find you if they want to connect with you, whether they want to invest or they want to learn more about you or follow you on LinkedIn. How can they find you, Mustafa?
So you can find me on LinkedIn. Faisal will have my information in the show notes. You can also find me in the school community. If you're trying to grow your LinkedIn and you don't really know what you're doing, I wouldn't blame you. And rather than spending the time trying to figure it out, I've created free content. The community is really based on financial literacy, but right now in our beta phase, we're just focusing on how to grow on LinkedIn. The idea is to help people learn a skill to be able to monetize off that skill. In the case of you as a coach, it's really about talent stacking. It's getting decent at a couple different skills so that you're very good at all 3. And then you're in a position to be more credible in your audience. I think LinkedIn is really valuable as that phase 1 for a lot of coaches. So I'll also give Faisal that link and access to that community. And ultimately, I'm a resource. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, DM me, comment on whatever content that resonates. And I'm more than happy to allocate time to see how I can help you grow and scale. And usually, just like Faisal, it's access to my network. It's to say, hey, like, I have somebody in my network who solves the problem you have, or who can help you get 1% better. And that can be dangerous. If you're scaling 1% every day, you're more than 30xing every year. And that's really the type of growth that people see when they work with me.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. We'll put the notes, the links below when Mustafa sends it to us, and I'd love for you, if you're listening, if you've gotten value from this podcast, share with another coach who might be struggling with similar things. I mean, these are the recurring challenges that every business owner deals with, but also coaches deal with, because we're also business owners in the process. And that's the part that's a struggle for a lot of coaches a lot of times. So thank you, Mustafa, for sharing everything that you have. I appreciate you. And we'll come back with another conversation next week. Hope you all have
Sounds
an
good, guys.
incredible day. Bye.
Have a good one. Bye.